What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker.
Amir, Rahimi.
And today on The Great Debaters, getting into some Ras Kass. Alright, Amir, so we're back here on The Great Debaters. You know, it's very exciting that we're going to hear into Ras Kass, Soul on Ice, his debut album, 1996. At this point, I had been listening to Ras for a while, of course. Won't Catch Me Running, remain anonymous. And then getting to know Ras at this point, and it was pretty awesome. And hearing this album develop into what became Soul on Ice. Amazing time. Shout out to Patchwork and the whole crew down in Atlanta. It was a great time. Great time. So, Amir, what were your first remembrances and exposures to Ras Kass Soul on Ice?
I don't remember what I heard first on this album. I do remember back when I did buy this album, it was actually at Amoeba in Hollywood. And I remember this was one of those albums that at the time I wasn't spending a ton of music on rap music, or a ton of money on rap music. I usually was buying things pretty cheap, and this was one of those instances where the album, it said out of print, and then it said like $25, I remember was what it was selling for at the time. And for me, like, I wasn't buying UCDs for that much, really, at that point in my life. So I was like, interesting. I didn't know too much about Ras Kass, but I had heard just like a few songs over the years prior. So I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and just like pick this up if it's still here the next time I visit, because I'm going to do some research, maybe listen to a song on YouTube or something. And then I had done that, and I was like, oh yeah, this song's pretty good. Didn't want to spoil it, so I just went and I picked it up. And wow, definitely a very, very good album. One of my favorites, and my favorite from Ras Kass as well. And to start off the top three for myself, I'm just going to go ahead and start off with Nature of the Threat. That is, I think, if not most people's favorite, it's the most talked about, that's for sure, from the album.
For sure.
And interestingly enough, it's not a single. I think to have this song on your debut studio album is very risky. But man, it's I think the song is awesome. I think there's a lot of parts on the song where Ras Kass, he's rapping, and there's some parts where he's talking, so his flow is kind of, I don't want to say it's all over the place, because I think it works completely, but it's very, for example, when he's making the quotes where he's quoting like just some of the people in the song, it's like he's talking, but then he starts rapping, then he starts rhyming, he does all these other things, and I think he just makes it work in a great way. It's not a short song by any means, and it's really, there's no chorus, he's just going. And I haven't done a ton of research on the song, and I haven't done a ton of fact finding. I just take it for Raz's approach and how he views things, and it's really, a lot of this song he ties back into the album, because a lot of the album is focused on themes from the song, and how he's basically talking about like how they commissioned Michelangelo to paint white pictures of Jesus. You put him closer to God. I mean, he talks about that on other parts of the album where that's why racism parts of it exist, and other things. He talks about the 3/5 of a man back in those days, if you just believe that, your 14th Amendment and a good brother. Like, all these things he's talking about are just very interesting, because you kind of see whether you agree or whether he's telling the truth or whatever, right? Whether these facts are fiction or whatever it is, you can still see what he thinks and why he thinks that is, and also how that plays effect in his music and in his life. And it's very intriguing, definitely. And I think Ras Kass makes a strong point, and it's definitely a very, very, very controversial song. And I think it's also just a great song in that it generates discussion, and that it's just one of those tracks that people always go back and listen to and use it as an example. And like I said, it's a super risky song to have on your album, debut album at that, and I really respect Ras for it. I think it's awesome. There's so much to be said about that song in general, but that's just some brief notes on it. So Soren, what about you?
Nature of the Threat's also one of my picks, and I remember hearing about the song before I heard it, because I was down with the Patchwork crew and knowing what was going on, and then when I heard it, I was blown away because of the fact that we're not getting taught this type of stuff in school, and the fact that it was very detailed and very graphic and all this other stuff, I was like, man, this is like a You Must Learn or Why Is That by Boogie Down Productions, but in a different, longer, more dramatic manner and fashion. So that all blew me away. And then, you know, when you realize history is presented in different ways and it's told by whoever happens to be telling it as opposed to potentially the reality of what it is. So Raz presenting a lot of this information that I think people like Amir would say would find controversial, I thought was awesome that he was providing a different perspective, great insight, and a lot of factual information. That being said, I was also blown away that Priority Records was putting this out, because in '96 Priority, you know, had been a bastion for free speech for a long time. One of the many reasons why I think that's a great label. But, you know, they had gone through these wars and battles with N.W.A, with the Ghetto Boys, with Ice-T, with Paris. You know, when Ice-T and Paris had their problems with Time Warner, Priority's like, oh, come over to Priority, we'll put you out. And same with the Ghetto Boys when they lost their deal with Geffen. You know, oh, come to Priority, man, we'll put you guys out. And all of Rap-A-Lot, for that matter. So in that regard, this was to me a continuation or the next evolution of Priority endorsing and celebrating this free speech, which they did with Ras Kass, and allowing him to do it. And the other thing about it that I also thought was intriguing was that there wasn't a big hubbub nationally or beyond the immediate rap world like there had been in those other instances, which I also thought was interesting. So is that a sign of the times, that people were just more used to it, or people didn't hear the song, or whatever the reason, it didn't create this stir that I imagine it might have? Now, if it came out today, I think it might be a little bit different. But regardless, I thought it was awesome on every single level, and that's why it's one of my top 3 picks for Soul and Ice. Amir, what's your second pick?
So I like how you mentioned that also about Priority Records, because I definitely agree, and I think Priority's one of the premier labels for that reason. My second track pick is going to be Sunset. I think this song is just awesome, man. I mean, this was kind of like the era where that song would come out. I mean, this album came out in '96. We had heard stuff with Bow Down. We had heard stuff that Tupac released. We had heard stuff that all these groups, New York, New York, LA, LA. Like, we heard these songs. We heard the tensions. We saw all this stuff. And just there's a track record of songs with it. And Sunset is one of the more underrated cuts from that era. And I think Ras Kass just does it in a totally different way. And I think the way that he just raps and just the words he puts together is just unlike any rapper, to be honest with you. I mean, how he is saying like F all y'all and backwards and spelling it out, how he's basically putting his coast on the map, saying I'll make UCLA like Ed O'Bannon is just insane, because Ed O'Bannon was like a basketball player for UCLA. I mean, just the way he presents things in front of you, I think, is really awesome. And I think and it's kind of his point, right? Like, Ras Kass is such a good lyricist and rapper. Why are people not giving West Coast their props for being good rappers? Oh, they're just gangsters, or they just have good production with G-Funk, or they're just good with the lowriders and all these other things. Ras Kass is a whole freaking awesome lyricist, and it's just funny to me because I think he'd wrap circles around a lot of people, but here he is like trying to prove his point, and he doesn't even have to because he's just so good. But he's still paying respects. He's saying much respect to the pioneers. He's saying I got clicks from 510 to 516, so he's shouting out their area codes. But he's also has valid points where he's saying like, what your borough did in '83 is ancient history, bro. Like, give me some props. You know what I mean? And I think Ras Kass he's just putting out a statement on there. Oh my God, the pressing California license plates in all 50 states. I mean, he's really repping hard. And I just think Sunset is like an aggressive song, but it's also like, oh man, so much can be said about this banger track. And it's also not a short song either, especially that that, oh my god, it's great. And then the skit at the end is also pretty funny, how he's saying, oh, you're fucking his hoes and you're in his city and like all this stuff, so why you got beef with him, man? So anyway, Sunset, it makes him feel some type of way, because like, you know, stand up for yourself, thanks for repping, time to get your props because you earned them. But what about your second pick on the album?
Yeah, my second pick on Soul on Ice is also Sunset, because a lot of the things you said, and I wanted, before I say some of my commentary, being that you were born and grew up in LA, when you would hear songs like this or Bow Down or other songs where people were repping the West hard, West Side Slaughterhouse, whatever, as a fan, did you feel extra, like, did you feel how the artist felt? Like, oh man, everybody's hating on LA, or everybody, or was it more of you just liked it because they were bigging up LA, or both, or what were you as a fan feeling?
So as a fan, before you get into more of your explanation, I liked it because from my perspective, being a third person, not directly involved in what the artists were dealing with, I did feel like there was that bias towards East Coast artists, particularly New York. And I just saw that not only in the music, but also in articles, in publications, in reviews. So I felt that, but to hear an artist's perspective was very different. So to hear them kind of stand up for themselves, or kind of like grab their props, take their props, I thought it was definitely inspiring, risk-taking, and I just thought it was great. So
yeah, as an outsider as well, being from Maryland, we didn't have a lot of people repping our home, but I definitely felt it, and I think that's why I could always identify a lot with songs like Sunset, because it was always like, man, you know, we're not from New York, but that doesn't mean we're not valid and we're not contributing a lot to what's going on. So I definitely felt this song, and I liked how Raz did that kind of balance of giving props, but also being like, hey man, you know, we're also putting it down too. And I think as Soul on Ice goes, and as Raz was emerging at this point, and as this type of non-gangster rap from the West Coast was continuing to grow and develop as it did at this time, it was still so dramatic that artists were being dissed and dismissed because they were from the West Coast and they couldn't be lyrical because they were from the West or what have you. And Raz just had already put that to bed before he even released Soul on Ice, but songs like Sunset, I think, put the nail in the proverbial coffin of that, and just showed like, hey man, you know, the West got something to say. So there you go. So that's my second pick. Amir, what's your third pick for Soul on Ice?
So this is interesting because I think this album is great, and I like every song on here, but it was pretty easy for me to pick my top three, which is seldom seen on this series. It's usually very tough for me. I'm always making excuses that my list is going to change. I don't think my list is going to change with this album. There's three songs in particular that I really hold above all else, and it's a stellar album, so you can really go any way, but for me, nope, these are my three. My last one is going to be The Evil That Men Do. Wow, talk about powerful songs. I mean, we just talked about The Nature of the Threat, which most people would say is the most powerful song. I would argue that this might be even more strong, because this is Ras Kass really talking about his life, his mess-ups, his family, things that he regrets, or I don't want to say actually regrets, but in the song, actually, the way that he writes it, it's very much he's just stating the fact rather than he's saying, like, I shouldn't have done this or I should have done that. He's kind of just telling it like it is and how it was. And I find that very interesting. So, you know, there's some parts of the song where he's talking about, like in the intro, how he's talking about, you know, how his granddaddy beat his grandma, but that was before his time, but he saw it affected her mind. And he was talking about, one of the most sad songs sad lines in that song, as well as, honestly, in all of rap, is where he said he remembers a night where he covered himself in baby powder so his black ass could be white. I mean, that was a really sad line, but that also kind of goes back to Nature of the Threat, like with the Michelangelo line and Jesus and all these things. It all relates, and that's why I think this is such a powerful album. But to go back to The Evil That Men Do, I mean, that line is very sad, actually. So you hear that, which is insane. Then it goes on and on and on and on and on. And you hear how he's trying to get a girl. He didn't respect her. He banged her. He put a seed in the earth. He had a kid. He didn't even know about it. Then he goes drunk driving, and he has a history of drunk driving as well. But in this song, this is maybe the first instance he brings it up on record. But he talks about that manslaughter. He's in prison, or doing Pruno, Wayside, etc. Blah 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 blah. And it's like, damn, like this is like this guy's life. And when he's dropping this album, he's in his 20s. I don't remember his age, but he's in his 20s. Like, damn, this young man lived this crazy life already. Then he eventually gets out, and he has another powerful line. This is why Ras Kass is such an underrated, awesome lyricist that people need to talk about more, where he has a line where it's something along the lines of, I look in the mirror and I see every other brother I knew. It's the evil that men do. So in the beginning, he's talking about his granddaddy and how he beats his grandma, or his uncle's doing crazy stuff or whatever. Now he's saying, like, well, I look in the mirror and now I'm a product of them. And I just find that to be a very powerful line. And I think Ras Kass is talking about some autobiographical things. Like I said, he's not necessarily saying he regrets them. He's just putting it out there, and you take it for what it is. And I think it's a very, very, very strong song. And I salute Raz for making a song like this for someone who had done a lot of things that some people would say were wrong or bad. He comes and approaches it with wisdom, in my opinion. So definitely appreciate him for putting that out there. So that's my final pick.
In a rare instance, we have all three the same.
That's shocking. I'm shocked.
Evil That Men Do is very powerful, and I've gotten to know Raz personally over the years. Shout out to Raz as always. Yeah. And man, hearing these type of songs where the artist, and knowing him and knowing what's going on with him a lot of the time, it's like, to be that vulnerable, to be that honest, to be that specific, to be that revelatory, and just to be so, like Amir was saying, matter of fact about it. And it's a very somber and sobering song at the same time, because it's just very, just the way he does it is so powerful, because it's so, you can visually, you can imagine these scenes happening. And of course, knowing Raz and being around him a lot over the years, like, I can even more so because of other conversations he and I have had. But the reality is, this type of song, I think, is the song that shows the depth of rap and the power of rap, and why rap is timeless. Because this type of struggle, this type of frustration, like Raz details in The Evil That Men Do, is generational, and it's affecting what other people did to your ancestors and people that came before you affects you. As with Nature of the Threat, things that happened centuries ago, thousands of years ago, are having ripple effects that last till today. And The Evil That Men Do does it on a more personal, specific, familial level, which I thought was super powerful and innovative, and in a lot of ways, as on a lot of the rest of Soul and Ice, it's very braggadocio. It's very like, I'm great, I'm this, I'm that, like a lot of rap is. But when you take these detours creatively and do The Evil That Men Do the Sunsets, do the Nature of the Threats, even drama in a different way with Coolio, it just shows the breadth of Ras Kass, the artist, the brilliance of his conceptual things that he creates to make songs out of, but then also the ability of him to take his real life and put it in a song in a way that's compelling and that's affecting Amir and me in ways that are, significant and profound, because the song is that striking and that powerful. And it just shows all these societal, economic, and legacy type of things that go into affect Raz and his life. And for that alone, man, it's super duper powerful. So those are my 3 picks. You guys got Amir's 3 picks. If you haven't already, please subscribe here to Unique Access Entertainment. Also, if you haven't, please join us as a member. That helps us continue growing and doing as many shows as possible. So please subscribe, Join us as a member here on Unique Access Entertainment. I'm Soren Baker.
Amir, Rahimi.
The Great Debaters, y'all, and shout out to Raz for this magnificent album, Soul and Ice.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Your MTV Back with N.W.A.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.